What if Black Friday deals were available in the summer? Don't miss week-long doorbusters at Best Buy during Black Friday in July. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
We will continue to go after the fraudsters, the grifters and the con artists, no matter who they are or where we find them.
Nigel Farage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
During PMQs, I couldn't hear a single word. I'm sure people in this chamber couldn't. All the way through, the Honourable Member for Clacton was trying to ask a reasonable question.
Poor old.
We do not subscribe to this sort of dog whistle politics in Reform UK.
Hello, and welcome to Quiet Riot Sunday School, the shot of espresso to the iced caramel latte that is our main Thursday episode. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I'm Naomi.
And I'm Alex.
Alex,
Yeah.
I think you have gone to quite extreme lengths to escape heat and find air-conditioned space. And I think maybe you've had quite an interesting experience in the cinema. Tell me more.
It wasn't just air conditioning. They were spraying water in my frigging face.
What? What are we
Have
talking
you
about
ever
here?
been to 4DX?
I have not. No, I didn't even know about it.
So it's this new thing that's basically part cinema, part theme park ride is the only way I can describe it. So the seats move around. They tilt, they tip forward, they jerk from side to side. There are smoke machines and smell-emitting machines in the theatre. There is flashing technology. In the seat in front of you are things that spray you with water if there's a scene that sort of requires it. Behind your head, there are two little holes that can blow air. You know, if something whizzes past, you know, if someone shoots, then suddenly
Right.
you hear sort of...
Bullet go past.
And by your feet are these like little tentacles that move.
So where did you go? O2 or something?
Yeah, I went to the Cineworld in O2 because, you know, I've been curious about this new technology and I thought Jurassic World Rebirth is the right sort of film to try this out on. I was exhausted. So was Clive. We were
Normally only on a roller
exhausted.
coaster for a couple of minutes, right? But a film
We
is
were
2 hours
exhausted.
plus.
Going in, I was like, oh, don't worry, it'll, you know, gently sort of sway from side to side, and it will all be like early 3D, basically. That's not what it was. I thought if I were a few stone lighter, it would have flung me out of the seat. These things really do move.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, they go out of their way to really take every opportunity to shake you and spray you and blow at you.
If Heston Blumenthal did cinema, it would be this.
That's a fantastic analogy. Sorry, Heston, if you're listening. I'm not sure how I feel about it. It was so new and made me so giggly and a little bit nauseous at the start.
Yeah,
And-
that's what I'd be worried about.
And quite
Easily.
unsafe, you know, because you kind of give away control, which is not an easy thing for me, as you might imagine. It's why I hate going on roller coasters. It's why I hate going to big gigs where you feel if you need to get out, you can't, you know. It's not claustrophobia. It's a sort of, it's feeling that there is no getting out of it until the thing is over, you know. It's a weird...
I went to Evita at the London Palladium on Tuesday night.
I played chair.
I know you did. You told me. And he is spectacular in
Is
it.
he? He's got good numbers, doesn't he?
Oh man, he is amazing. But we were right up in the gods, very cheap. Well, you know, not cheap, but the least expensive seats, right in the middle of a row. And I had that slight feeling of, if there was a fire, I'm not getting out of here very quickly. And, you know, at the beginning, I had to sort of put that out of my mind because it was pretty cramped in and an incredibly packed show.
But that aside, how was it? How was the show?
Incredible. It is a superb performance. If you even semi-like musicals, go and see it. I know it's an Andrew Lloyd Webber and the musical snobs will say, you know, rubbish, but it is an incredible performance by everyone involved. The orchestra are amazing. The cast, the set, her doing the song out on the balcony to Argyle Street, like it all works superbly well. And I'd see it again. It was amazing. Listeners, there is just 1 week to go until our next live Ask Us Anything show, which of course is exclusively for our backers. So if you want to come along to that, make sure you signed up for as little as a £5 a month at ko-fi.com/quiet-riot-pod. If you want to join us, it's next Sunday, 20th of July at 4 p.m. And Kenny is going to be sending invites out by the end of this week. So you've got just a few more days to sign up for that if you'd like to join us.
And if you've not already done so, please do rate, review, subscribe, and follow us on all platforms to help us grow our audience and spread the Quiet Riot joy to friends and family. We know, because we hear from you, that you sometimes listen to what we put out as a group. That doesn't help numbers. So make sure if you listen all together, you also download it individually.
Alex, what should we talk about today? There really is a glut of news out there.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have to leave some for Thursday. You know, the emerging massive row with various unions that's happening between the doctors and the government, Unite and the government, the bin collectors and the government. I think that's very much still developing. So we will leave it until either Thursday or next Sunday. The outcome of the summit wasn't known when we last spoke, and so I would love your thoughts on that. And we have a special report from our gorgeous Chevalier correspondent, Olivier Morel, who was at a dinner with Emmanuel Macron on the last evening of the visit. So I got the gossip from him.
Cannot wait to hear that. And, you know, that whole visit really got me thinking about why politicians are often liked so much more abroad than they are at home.
Yeah.
And like talking about unlikable politicians, we're going to have to look at hard right politics here in the UK because Reform have lost one MP. They've gained a former Tory MP chairman, Jake Berry, defecting over to them. And there's been not one, but two new movements / political parties popping up, led by Rupert Lowe and Ben Habib. So we've got to chew over all of that.
Yes, what's the Oscar Wilde line? To lose one MP is misfortune. To lose two begins to look like carelessness.
Quiet Riot.
It's one of the great quirks of political life that a leader can be ridiculed or resented in their own country while being treated like political royalty abroad. This week's state visit by Emmanuel Macron offered a perfect case in point. While Macron's approval ratings in France continue to bump along near rock bottom, his address to the UK Parliament was greeted with a standing ovation and glowing headlines. A statesman, said one British broadsheet. A friend, said Starmer. Can we swap, said at least one tweet.
I saw that Larry tweeted after the tapestry.
Is he happy about the tapestry?
Yeah.
He's got a very good social media profile. He's the most popular person on the street.
Who is the one to do this tweet for Larry?
Nobody
Larry
knows.
himself. What do you mean, Mr. President?
Probably somebody here.
It's a very clever cat.
But it was absolutely wonderful tweet after the tapestry.
But what of the actual outcomes of the visit? Naomi, what is the big takeaway for you?
Well, obviously, because of my day job and being very concerned with the UK-EU trading relationship in particular, and the summit that von der Leyen and Starmer had back in May, where it was mooted that we would be trying to negotiate British access to the Safe Defence Fund, that £150 billion worth of cash up for grabs for those that can participate. And von der Leyen said that the UK's access to that safe fund would be settled within a matter of weeks. And those weeks have come and gone. Macron has come and gone. And during his visit, talked so much about security and defence and the importance of the UK and France working together on that stuff, that for me, not including progress on that access, which media reports all over the place are saying is France's resistance to the UK getting access to that fund. And of course, we would have to pay into it as well as be able to procure from it or bid to procure from it, I think is the big thing for me. We need for British people to see that the reset benefits both. When we look at the polling, it's very, very clear. You get reform voters all the way through to Green and Lib Dem voters on that open closed access, coalescing in agreement that a closer relationship is what they want. You get them polarizing at both ends of that scale when you talk about rejoining or even customs union or single market access, but that you can hold the British electorate together on the closer relationship. At the moment, it's beginning to feel lopsided. The EU have progressed their mandate on youth mobility, Erasmus+, and they haven't yet done it for the agri-food deal or, very importantly, for access to SAFE. And that means holding together that coalition of voters in support of a closer relationship could begin to fragment if the UK isn't seen to be able to progress the things it wanted from the summit in the same pace as the EU is able to progress its. So I really think that France should have signalled a little bit more that they will come to the table on that and they will begin to help get that mandate for the EU for the safe access. So, for me, it was a lot of great words, but on the things that really matter and that are going to be critical for the EU to be able to negotiate with this good partner that it's got in a Labour government versus a potentially less good one if the polls as they are continue to hold, I think is dangerous. So yeah, for me, it was that. What about you?
I mean, I thought that the nuclear deal, the thing that got the least coverage, is the most, not just important, I think historic moment, probably of the last few years. Basically, it is the embryonic articulation of the idea of a European nuclear umbrella. That's what it is. Britain has always had this thought in the back of its mind that it might own the submarines, it might own the nuclear warheads, but the delivery system was American and needed constant refreshing, repairing, etc. Now there is an alternative delivery system. That is huge in terms of defense. I think if you take it along with the commitment that European countries are now making to a 5% defense spend, if you put it together with their strong backing of Ukraine, if you put it together with Sweden and Finland joining NATO, I think it has brought Putin to really the worst position, the worst possible outcome he could expect from his invasion of Ukraine. However that ends up, whatever territorial gains he makes, the permanent outcome is that he now has a newly rearmed Europe at his actual border watching him. Basically, the thing that he has made up for years to justify all his transgressions, he has now made true. The points you raise about the defense stuff, I think are really, really important. And I think that's why I love the way your mind works. Do you know Rubens' vase, I think it's called? It's the classic optical illusion where there is a sort of ornate vase, but the negative space, the black around it, creates the profiles of two people talking to each other.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when I see the vase, you tend to see what's not there and vice versa. And that's why I love chatting to you about this stuff. I think both things are vitally important. And to see the media reaction, the shallow media reaction of every news organization had their journalists standing on a beach in Dover for all of Friday, pointing to the sea and going, not working yet, still boats coming. All the while, Chris Philp is touring studios saying, 50 returns a week is nothing. Sorry,
how many
mate, but
did you manage, Dickon?
Yeah, it's 46 more than you managed in 3 fucking years at the cost of 700 million quid. If you want a perfect illustration of why we are where we are in terms of the quality of our political debate, all you need to do is look at the headlines the day after Macron's state visit. That's all you need to do. And you will see that every news organization has its own obsessions and they don't care about the actual stories. It really, really irritated me.
Let's hear from someone who was having dinner with Macron not 3 evenings ago. Alex spoke to our favourite French connection, partner at the law firm Cripps and chair of the UK chapter of the French Foreign Trade Advisors, our own Chevalier, Olivier Morel.
Hello, Olivier. Thank you for joining us again.
Lovely to be here. Thank you very much, Alex.
On this great week for Franco-British relations, I guess, I cannot see this sort of state visit happening 2 years ago or 4 years ago. Can you?
Oh, correct. Speaking to the French embassy at the time of the infamous Austrian submarine, AUKUS treachery, as the French see it, the relationship was an all-time low. I have not known, it goes through ups and downs, and I've known many ups and many downs over 40 years, but this was by far the biggest. And one of the signs, although they'll deny it, is shortly at that time, the then ambassador was appointed at French FCO, and the French ambassador was not replaced for several months. And I think this was a deliberate message of you do not matter, it's not a priority. Everyone will deny it, of course, but I saw it was the feeling from that was extremely strong. And now the contrast is this state visit, as we know, as the French president said in one of his many speeches, we like kings as long as it's not in France. The French are endlessly fascinated by sort of the pomp and circumstances. And I was at the Guildhall on Wednesday night, and this was no exception. This is Britain's the extremes of formality, but formality which is done in an incredibly friendly way. So it's the best of both worlds, and the French love it.
Just to explain for listeners that what was going on was a state dinner put together by the City of London Corporation, I think, wasn't it?
Correct, yeah. The Lord Mayor was inviting, yes.
At which you were, and at which also Emmanuel Macron and his wife were.
Correct, and several ministers and several in his entourage that came across. And I'm glad to say it's my second, he said immodestly, because I was there for the last one for Nicolas Sarkozy and Carla Bruni at the time, 17 years ago. This was the first visit for 17 years of a French head of state, and the first visit from a European leader since Brexit. So this was a big deal. I mean, he had a really good speech, but he went unscripted, and I think that was the best part, because he got the biggest cheer when he said, in effect, the EU is poorer for being without the UK.
It's an interesting point because it's not one that is acknowledged. Brexit for sure hurt the UK a lot more than it hurt Europe, but it did hurt Europe. It's interesting to see Britain becoming again an asset, becoming again an attractive partner in defense, in trade, in commerce, by being a little bit less defensive, I guess, and a little bit more predictable.
Yes, there's absolutely that. The political climate has definitely changed. And I don't think it's a mystery that we have grown up in charge. They will make mistakes, etc. But we are talking to people who are grown-ups. There's no longer the sort of histrionics that been the hallmark of quite a few years before. But also I also met the French Chancellor during the day, and he said something which I think is quite true. Things are getting, the world is a very unpredictable place. And I don't think it's a coincidence that France and Britain finding that actually it's quite good to be able to rely on each other where we have common interests. We may have things we disagree on, but there are a few fundamentals. Defense is one of them. Our respective armed forces, it's a challenge to ramp it up again after a long period of the peace dividend where we basically strip down and have an army that is a shadow of its former self. So we're both in the same place. And the only way to do things is to do things together, really.
Olivier, I know all the press and the political class are obsessed with the small boats deal, and we will talk about that briefly. But it seems to me that the most important aspect of this summit, the most important outcome, I should say, that hasn't really made it onto all the front pages is the nuclear deal. Are we seeing the beginning of a sort of European nuclear umbrella?
You're absolutely right. I mean, I was rolling my eyeballs when you said migrants. You couldn't see me. But anyway, yes, I think this is a really important thing because of as we know, the British deterrent is dependent upon a partner that is less than reliable, shall we say, across the pond. The French deterrent is independent. And the fact that we've started to see the beginning of, there is a body, I think, that's been put together to work together on those issues is huge, because understandably, France is very jealous of its independent deterrent. So to invite Britain to start working together is a big deal. And you're right, it's been mentioned, but I don't think it's been mentioned as prominently as perhaps it should.
One of the, I guess, downsides of being a big family of democratic nations in Europe, however you want to define it, whether the continent as a whole or the EEC or the EU or whatever, is that we can be a little bit slow to react and decide and take action. But the way we're seeing things develop now, isn't this the nightmare scenario for Putin?
He and his, if I call, quote unquote friend in the White House, somehow have conjured up to get Europe to sort of sit up and take notice. And they're the best argument why we should just take the threat very, very seriously. And had the Russians not kind of botched their invasion of Ukraine, I think things might have been different. But as they've completely failed to reach any of their objectives and are now knee-deep or more into a terrible conflict, there have been lots of words, so let's make sure that those words are translated into facts.
Quiet Riot. Now, this episode is sponsored by Shopify.
Why Shopify? Well, when we started Quiet Riot, there was so much we had to figure out on our own. Even though we'd both got plenty of experience appearing on podcasts, starting our own from scratch threw up a lot of challenges, from finding studios and designing logos to wrestling with contracts and dealing with platforms.
And on a show like this, the to-do list, I can assure you, is never, ever done, and getting help is essential. Otherwise, the process of creating a show can drain the joy of putting out a podcast that we are so proud of.
For some challenges, that means reaching out to friends who can point us in the right direction, hopefully with a smile and an encouraging pat on the back. But for others, you just need the right tool for a particular job.
For millions of businesses, one of those tools is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands like ours just getting started. As we're developing our thinking about Quiet Riot branded merchandise, Shopify was the first name that came to mind to manage the whole process for us.
It's straightforward enough to get started with your own design studio. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify can help you build a beautiful online store to match your brand's style.
It can accelerate your content creation too. Shopify is packed with helpful tools that help you write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography.
Plus, you can get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. It's easy to create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling.
Best of all, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and more. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify.
So turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your £1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.co.uk/quietriot. Go to shopify.co.uk/quietriot. That's shopify.co.uk/quietriot.
Quiet Riot.
Can I ask you, what has the reaction in France been of the summit and its outcomes? How has it been received in France, where it's this very strange thing? Macron is a lot more popular here than he is back in France, in the same way that I think Keir Starmer is much more popular internationally than he is domestically.
You're absolutely right. I mean, and I think it's interesting that not just because of the summit, there is some French polling showing that even those people that he triggers, I'm always sort of slightly baffled by this, this level of, I would say, hate. Even his detractors admit that on the international stage, he's doing the job. He's doing a really good job. He's quite young still, and yet he's one of Europe's elder statesmen. And he speaks with authority on behalf of Europe, as it were. And he puts the case for France's place in the world in a very good way. So in France, people do, albeit some of them grudgingly, admit that he does a good job. The overall vibes were extremely positive. I think the press in common with the public. When they turn their attention, because there are many other topics, they don't spend their time watching what goes on in the UK. But for 2 or 3 days, I think there is a genuine fondness for this country and a genuine desire for things to get better. So I think the state visit in that respect was regarded, very positively.
About the migration sort of, I guess it's a pilot scheme at this stage. How is that going down across the channel? Is that seen as a positive development or as a nothing?
As always, it's divided along sort of political lines. I think a bit like here, to the sort of right-wing side of the political spectrum, nothing will be ever good enough apart from lock them up and throw away the key type of attitude. The former French ambassador to the UK, Sylvie Berman, said on the Today programme ahead of the state visit, just reminding Britain that we are doing your job, as it were, because the voices here saying, the French police are not aggressive enough, are not doing this, etc. So there's an element of that, I think, still. I think you were talking about it in your main show quite rightly. Are other European partners going to worry that those migrants that are returned to France are then going to find themselves back in Italy, Spain, Greece, and other parts of Europe? Again, it's a lot of politics. Just as an aside there, ahead of the summit, there's been behind the scene, I think the French preparing, obviously with their British counterparts, preparing the agenda. And as you can imagine, it's a big endeavor. The French were surprised and slightly irritated at how much time was devoted to that single issue, because the British government was hell-bent on extracting something to satisfy what they see as the electoral agenda.
When really, in terms of overall numbers, it's a drop in the ocean. I mean, on both
exactly.
sides.
And the French were saying, well, hang on, there's defense, there's, the economy, there's the exchange of scientists, youth mobility. Those things are far more important. And apparently the British delegation kept coming back saying, yes, we know it's important, but can we talk about migrants and little boats? And it's a bit like, oh, come on, can we? In the end, I think, politics is politics, so something had to be done, and there had to be this grand announcement of this scheme. And as you say, it's a pilot. But I was ever so slightly, depressed that things turned back to this again, which, as we know, is such a small part. And after all, we talk about human lives, not just numbers on a board type thing.
Yeah. In a more general context, how are things developing in France? Because we haven't spoken in a while. I sort of follow the news. I know that Parliament is still in a little bit of a gridlock, slow at putting legislation through, etc. Marine Le Pen's trial is still in the appeal process, so we still don't know whether she will be a candidate at next year's presidential election. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. I'll start with that one, the Rassemblement National, her party. There's clear signs of internal tensions because I think she's barred from standing, and at the moment, the predictions is that she may well not be. And she had this young chap, Bardella, in the wings as a sort of understudy, but who was going to rise. But under her watch, I think the feeling is that he's getting, a little big for his boots. And you sense the tension where there was an event where, he took the stage to say something on a particular topic, and she had to say something else, to say, oh, I'm still here, alive and kicking, and don't you think I'm going away? So I think there is that tension in the party. On the sort of what's going on widely in sort of Parliament and the French political scene, as you say quite rightly, because the government is constantly terrified of being brought down by a vote of no confidence. And as we know, this kind of thing could happen by accident on something innocuous. So they're basically concentrating on just a few key pieces of legislation. It's got to do with basically the budget. So not much is going on in Parliament because they don't have much to do. And the bandwidth is completely occupied by simply surviving from one week to the next, which is not a way, given all the challenges, like all of the countries like Britain, France faces, the same challenges. This is quite worrying because the inability to plan for the long term when you're constantly thinking, of looking over your shoulder and thinking that you have to survive from week to week. I don't think anything will change until either there's another dissolution, but I would find that bizarre, or the government is brought down. But in any case, it's the next big kind of date is the next presidential election in 2027. Someone jokingly said, we started totting up the number of people who think, or are they candidates, are they not? And we stopped at 35. So as always, there's more people that think they can do the job that can do the job, of course.
Is there someone emerging, I guess, as an heir to Macron, as a sort of candidate that could consolidate some of the anti-far-right vote?
There are several. There's quite a few on the right. There's the Home Office, so Rotaillot, who's now has been elected as the head of what is left of the mainstream conservatives, the Parti Républicain. So Edouard Philippe, who was Macron's first prime minister, who again is quite popular, but he's popular until he's officially a candidate. You've got the socialists again, or the rump of what was left. There's several people there who think of running again. François Hollande I think hasn't ruled himself out, as the former president. I know you exactly. That was my reaction. This really. The danger is that there are so many people on both sides who think they can run that you could see a scenario of both the extremes, I think, getting through to the second round, because as we know, there are 2 rounds of presidential election. So first round, everyone runs, and the votes get split between so many different candidates that actually the 2 that come ahead are the 2 extremes of Marine Le Pen or someone from the far right, and then Mélenchon or someone else from the far left. You end up with, as we say in French, the choice between the plague and cholera, la peste et le choléra. So,
do you know, the feeling in my waters is that it's going to be someone completely random, Olivier. It's like Mew Mew or someone. Mylène Farmer will emerge as a candidate for.
I know. I saw at the state dinner. My wife had no idea who he was, of course, but Julien Clerc, if that means anything to you and your audience, lovely man, he was there, and you think, oh, maybe he might think of running. And by the way, I have no idea. I'm not revealing anything. Poor man. I mean, I love him as a singer anyway. So
Olivier, as always, really, really lovely to catch up. And every time we think there's not much going on, and every time we find that there is so much more to talk about than we thought.
I know. Lovely talking to you, Alex. Thank you.
Quiet Riot. If you've shopped online, chances are you've bought from a business powered by Shopify. You know that purple Shop Pay button you see at checkout? The one that makes buying so incredibly easy? That's Shopify. And there's a reason so many businesses sell with it, because Shopify makes it incredibly easy to start and run your business. Shopify is the commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/promo. Go to shopify.com/promo.
Quiet Riot. Naomi, I have been thinking more and more about that question, which I also put to Olivier. Why do some politicians seem to be loved abroad and loathed at home? Is it just a case of absence making the heart grow fonder, or do leaders shine brighter from a distance, as it were, than under the sort of flickering fluorescence of their own domestic policies?
I mean, it's the political equivalent of Instagram versus real life, isn't it? Like abroad, leaders are seen filtered at their best, giving speeches and signing treaties and smiling for brilliant photo ops. And at home, voters are wading through policies, cuts, crises, scandals. So I guess it's easy to admire Macron when you're not on strike in Marseille, or to idealise Starmer if you're not a benefit claimant in the UK facing cuts to your income. I think foreign audiences also project onto leaders what they want to see. Stability, clarity, statesman-like decency, especially when you're living through chaos at home. And it kind of reminded me of Trudeau, hailed as the liberal antidote to Trumpism by Europeans, even while Canadians were accusing him of virtue signalling and economic drift. And same with Jacinda Ardern during the pandemic. How many podcasts did we do about the pandemic? Lionizing her as this pandemic role model. And everyone was sort of looking to New Zealand as, why can't Johnson be more like Ardern? But domestically, she was being criticised for housing and inflation pressures. So it does seem to be quite a sort of global phenomenon that happens to leaders.
My only question, I guess, would be, which impression is more accurate? Sometimes the press of another country has a better overview of what the real big stories are in another place than the local media, which are obsessed with the everyday detail of what is going on and have their own narratives. Nobody in France is reporting that Ben Habib is starting his own party. And so sometimes I think distance gives better perspective.
And look, Starmer's the same, derided by many here, particularly on the left, as dull, evasive, overly cautious, a Tory in Labour clothing, but then gets talked up in European capitals as a stabilising force. A post-Brexit Blair without the Iraq-shaped baggage. You've had Macron, Schulz and von der Leyen reportedly thrilled to see Britain re-entering the diplomatic room without knocking over the furniture. And then in the US as well, like Obama, he won the Nobel Peace Prize before really doing anything in office and remained wildly popular abroad, even with domestic gridlock wearing down his glow at home. And then I think probably the example of it that's most striking, Merkel, often seen as this iron-willed accountant of austerity at home, but internationally heralded as like the last adult in the room during Trump's first presidency.
So is it a trick of the light or a reflection of how, I guess, global statesmanship play differently to a home crowd? And can it actually change the political weather at home when that happens?
It is such a double-edged sword. I mean, I think for Starmer, looking confident on the world stage helps make him feel prime ministerial because he is quite clearly a bit underconfident. If we go back to the whole point that we made when we began this show 14 months ago, no one was expecting the general election to happen when it did. And there was this kind of shell shock around Labour in the early days of government because they thought they had a few more months, that he would have another summer holiday with his children without being prime minister, etc. And he has obviously found it much harder than he hoped to. So hopefully some of the global accolade and the statesman-like roles he's able to play when he's not at home gives him confidence to then do the job better here. But I guess, if you don't deliver for people back home, the overseas praise will just look like a distraction or even arrogance. And we know that is very much how the French are viewing Macron. Please get out of the country and do your stuff on the world stage because you're really not delivering here at home. I mean, Blair, post-2003, still very much admired in Washington and Brussels, but booed at the Labour conference.
Yeah.
Applause abroad can turn hollow quite fast if you don't deliver.
I find it interesting because maybe it's also to do with a mindset. Maybe we all understand a little bit better that international diplomacy is about choosing the least worst option, is about being a pragmatist and a realist, and sometimes talking out of both sides of your mouth. But then when it comes to domestic politics, we reject trade-offs. We want to have everything we want and we want it right now. But I do think that sometimes when a big gulf opens between a politician's perception internationally and domestically, both need to sort of think, hang on, have I got this wrong? Is there anyone, do you think, who's genuinely managing to pull both off? Loved at home, respected abroad?
That is a tough question. And I hate to say it. I think you could probably make a case currently for Giorgia Meloni, oddly enough. Loathed for sure by progressives at home, but she is winning over the EU's old guard by playing a surprisingly pragmatic game. But it is rare. And maybe Norway's Jonas Gahr Støre, low-key but effective, grown up on the global stage, relatively secure at home. But for how long either of those manages to straddle both horses or not, I don't know. I do think it's rare, and I do think most leaders have to choose where they're clapped, Brussels or Blackpool.
Quiet Riot. Rated T for teen. Each year, thousands of adults lose their shred. It's an epidemic simply known as shred loss. But it doesn't have to be this way. Because rekindling your shred is as easy as playing the new Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4. With new parks, cross-platform multiplayer, and sick new game modes, we can put an end to shred loss everywhere. Get the new Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 and show the world that the shred's not dead. Get Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 available now.
Quiet riot. Well, if you thought the populist right in Britain had settled into a rhythm under Reform UK's banner, think again. This week saw a very public ousting of James McMurdoch MP. Until recently, one of the party's most prominent people and rising star in the Reform ranks. His abrupt removal sparked speculation not just about internal discipline and lack of party vetting, but about whether Nigel Farage is quietly purging voices that don't align with a tighter, Trumpier message. And then 2 former reformers have broken ranks to set up their own outfits. Ben Habib, former Brexit Party MEP, is trying to carve out a new space on the right with a political party called Advance UK. While still in its early stages, it's gaining some traction with disaffected Reform members and those who think Farage's vehicle has become too personality-driven, too erratic, or paradoxically not radical enough. He's pitching it as an unapologetically nationalistic, Britain first, Brussels nowhere party with a focus on economic sovereignty, anti-woke crusading, and relentless anti-immigration rhetoric. And then there's Rupert Lowe MP, who appears to be quietly building his own political apparatus called Restore Britain. Not a political party, not as flashy as Farage, nor ideologically restless as Habib, but let's face it, Rupert Lowe does have access to deep pockets and a network of Tory defectors. Lowe's appeal seems to be rooted in a kind of anti-elite, anti-everything conservatism, a home for those who feel politically homeless but aren't ready to line up behind Reform's latest frontman. It's tempting to dismiss these splits as a sideshow, but if 2019 taught us anything, it's that even small populist outfits can do enormous damage to the electoral maths in marginal seats. Whether Reform collapses under its own contradictions or simply splinters into smaller but disruptive factions remains to be seen. And there are signs which point the other way. Former Tory chairman Jake Berry has defected to Reform this week, much to Badenoch's irritation.
This is something which I say again and again, that there are a lot of people who come into politics just to play the game of politics, and they will follow polls and defect wherever they can, like they do in banana republics, to wherever they think that they can win. All of the people who are not interested in coming up with a proper policy plan and just want to jump ship are welcome to do so, because when the time comes at the next general election, the public are going to be looking for a serious, credible alternative. We are the only serious, credible alternative.
So what does this mean for the right's chances of unity heading into the next general election? Who stands to benefit most under this internecine warfare? Labour, Lib Dems, or perhaps the Tories themselves? And do McMurdoch, Habib and Lowe represent genuine ideological differences or just rival brands in the same bitter market? Alex, let's talk about McMurdoch. What happened? What's the allegation? Are we going to be looking at a by-election in his seat? Tell us more.
I can answer the by-election question the easiest, and that is that I have heard nothing that any police is investigating this as a criminal matter, which is surprising. When I explain the details of what happened, you might see why. And that means there's no by-election on the horizon for now. This may change, on Monday morning. The police force might come out and say, we've received a complaint, we're now investigating this. The investigation's going on. There's a Reform Party internal investigation, and apparently they're continuing, even now he's left the party. So, I don't know what their possible outcome of that might be, other than to say, yep or nope. And then the main thing is that the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards is investigating McMurdoch over allegations that, at the very least, he has failed to register his business interests. Basically, what's going on is that there's been an allegation by the Sunday Times, which has not been denied explicitly by McMurdoch, it has to say, that he claimed roughly £70,000 in bounce-back loans during the pandemic. Some of it through companies that appeared to be dormant, that appeared to not have filed accounts, that appeared to have overdue accounts that were about to be struck off by Companies House. The companies in question are Jam Financial Limited and Gym Live Health and Fitness Limited. He was listed as a director on both.
Yeah.
McMurdoch has said on social media I'm sorry, I'm going to have another giggling session now, like I did with Kenny last week.
Oh, what, when he removed the whip from his own pocket?
Yeah, when he said he's removed the whip from himself. I just love this guy's statements. I have now had a chance to take specialist legal advice from an expert in the relevant field. In light of that advice, which is privileged and which I choose to keep private at this time, I have decided to continue my parliamentary career as an independent MP, where I can focus 100% on the interests of my constituents. So you're not really keeping the advice that private, are you, James? Because what you're saying is that my lawyer said it's not looking good.
And so this is an allegation of fraud, right? That these were shell companies, dormant, not really doing anything.
Like I said, I'm not an expert in the area. I imagine there are several criminal offences around this,
right.
But none of them are being investigated or talked about at the moment. So I don't know. But certainly there is a breach of parliamentary rules, or an apparent breach of parliamentary rules that's being investigated, in that he wasn't listed as a director of these companies. They're not only part of his financial interests, they claimed government loans as recently as 2 years ago. So that seems to me an open and shut case. And I think that's what he's talking about, basically.
Yeah.
So he has made the removing of the whip from himself a permanent state of affairs. That's the bottom line. I'm so sorry. that really wasn't intentional. So, he resigned from the party permanently now. A great loss. Do you think Habib's new party has legs, or is it just another sort of offshoot doomed to live in Farage's shadow?
So Farage has sort of done the thing that everyone thought was not possible, and that is to break through the first past the post system with a brand new party, and actually win seats with it. With the honourable exception, maybe, of the Green Party, which took it many decades to get to where it is now on a similar number of MPs. So it can be done. Do I think Habib's outfit is likely to do that? No, unless Farage really implodes in terms of falling out with anyone and everyone around him. He is notorious for doing it. He loves to be king of the castle. And with growth comes scrutiny and comes the need for checks and balances and the participation of everybody with whom you are working and taking money and involving in your policy decision making. They will all begin to want to have authority, accountability, and internal democracy. So if Tice and Farage cannot get over that hurdle and relinquish control and democratize their own organization, then I think there probably is a genuine risk from somebody like Habib, who is a good media performer, beautifully spoken, articulate, and as impassioned as Farage when it comes to talking about the populist tropes that can fire up a large section of the electorate. So I think it's unlikely, but with Farage, you never really know how far he is from having such a major tantrum that he collapses the whole thing himself.
Habib does have one major disadvantage. No one wants to sort of talk about it, but he isn't white. And the slice of electorate you're trying to appeal, that can be a problem for some of them.
Yep. And is, why we know that Zia Youssef has also struggled in very recent time within the party. It is not a nice place to be if you are not a white person. Interestingly, though, go and listen to Ben Habib and close your eyes. You could be listening to Tony Blair. He has quite clearly modelled himself on the communication style of Blair. And everything from the pentameter of his voice and language, the accent, everything, it's so Blair. It's quite spooky, actually.
I find it extraordinary that you say this, because I was watching a clip of Richard Tice the other day, and everything about him, his voice, the movement, the thumb on the sort of hand, everything about him was clearly modelled on Blair. And sort of a couple of years ago, he's trying desperately to make his inflection sound like Farage. But the Blair imprint is absolutely there at large. It's so interesting.
It is. And Rupert's new gig, we should talk about briefly, is not a political party. And as I understand it, Habib did say to him, "Come on, Rupert, join Advance UK." And he said, I don't want to be a member of a political party. I don't want to go back under somebody else's thing. I think I'm going to do a nice movement building momentum style of the right thing. Can you see a point to it?
Yeah, I think it's smart, I'm afraid.
You think that's more smart than Habib's?
Yeah,
party?
because I'll tell you why. Because at this stage, it's all about name recognition. It's all about making the electorate aware of you. That is like the first and biggest obstacle for anyone trying to break through. And I think Rupert Lowe, with his sort of private inquiry into rape gangs, and I can genuinely see that he will get a lot more press, a lot more coverage, a lot more name recognition, and a lot more people from
EDL. He'll get the EDL people. He'll get the Tommy people.
Absolutely.
The big fallout he had with...
He'll get the Tommy people. That's what I was trying to do.
And those people don't like politics and politicians. And they're probably not going to join a political party, but they'll join a movement. They'll get along with a guy that will stand up for...
It's interesting because if your main plank is I will upend the establishment, then doing it in a non-establishment way seems to me more internally congruous than basically Reform UK at the moment is morphing into a more right-wing version of the Tories and sucking all their voters and a lot of their MPs and donors and former members. And it's being challenged. It's being challenged in precisely the way a party that claims to be serious would be challenged. Did you catch Richard Tice Economist thing?
I didn't. Tell us more.
Let me just play it for people.
Specifically on Daniel's point about your tax cuts, raising the threshold at which you start paying income tax to, I think, £20,000 from 12,500. How much is that going to cost?
It's about 40 billion.
Not according to the IFS, it's double that.
And that's why I said earlier, because the IFS numbers are completely ridiculous. Frankly, a juvenile forecast made on the back of a fag packet. Serious economists.
What's your number based on?
My base is based on the calculations of 3 different economists.
Who?
And I'm not going to give their names.
Why?
But because sometimes people give you advice privately, and that's why you go to 2 or 3 different people.
So we just trust you on the basis of 3 anonymous economists.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? I tell you what, lots of voters are trusting us. I fully accept our job now in those councils is to start to deliver on some of the things we said. Like, which flags you want outside buildings? We will be talking about significant savings, significant waste and incompetence that is essentially wasting
your tax cuts cost double what it is that you're...
It won't be, because I'm very confident
You're very
in my
confident
numbers.
in your 3 anonymous economists. But the OBR...
Frankly, they're better economists than clearly the people at the IFS.
I don't know who they are yet.
Well,
you won't tell
I do.
me.
And that's for me to have that confidence in.
Challenging the IFS figures on one of your policies and saying they're a joke. We've had 3 different amazing economists validate our figures, and then being asked, who are they? And going, they're secret.
Julian Jessup 2, and then there's the other one, isn't there?
Patrick Minford.
That's it.
I mean, come on. It's like, it's ridiculous. Actually, I don't think it's Julian Jessup, because Julian Jessup would never validate a policy so ludicrous. He may be pro that side of politics, but he's not a clown.
Okay, Patrick Minford 1, Patrick Minford's twin brother.
Yeah, Minford Patrick and...
Minford Matrick.
It is just so ridiculous, and these things will keep happening. I hate to cite Cummings, but what he was saying in that interview he gave to Sky, that if you want to progress from being a one-person movement to an actual party, you need more of a team around you. And my question which I haven't answered in my own mind yet, is, are these people being thrown out and defections part of Reform becoming more of a serious party, or are they part of Farage keeping it a one-man band? I don't know the answer to that, and we will only find that out in the months to come. Last question, Naomi, for you, because I think you've been looking at some numbers. Do these splinters actually help the Tories in practice, or do they just divide that protest vote and hand marginal seats to other parties?
Great question. Ever so briefly on what's happening over at Reform. Do you remember they've got their live membership tracker that they were boasting about, and we're overtaking Labour's membership and we're on 300,000 people and blah, blah, blah. Well, it's gone down. They've now dropped about 30,000 members at least, or 10,000 in a month, I think. You know, therein lies the danger of publishing your tracker, because everyone can see in real time that it's not going in the direction it had been. Now, that could be as much as a bot farm having closed down, for all we know. How true all of those numbers ever were, I don't know. But I mean, they were clearly doing very well. But it doesn't seem to be helping the Tory figures in any direction north, though, either. Neither poll ratings nor financially. We have seen that, you know, their Matthew Parker Street office, their HQ, that is available to rent. I am currently in the market for my own office move and have been looking at what's available in and around SW1 and was quite surprised to see that one could take that property on if they wanted to.
You're going to have to burn a truckload of sage if you end up in that place.
We cannot afford it. At the moment, I don't think it is helping the Tories. It probably is peeling some of the more extreme vote away from Reform when it comes to, you know, actual election time. And then when we look at the marginals, because you did mention those, and it is interesting, we often hear about this framing of, oh, the Morgan McSweeney strategy is, come the next election, voters will have to decide, do they want Keir Starmer as Prime Minister or Nigel Farage? When you look at the actual marginal seats where Labour and Reform are fighting each other, there are no Lib Dems and Greens left to squeeze. When we look at the threat of Farage versus Starmer, you might reasonably conclude that, yes, most Lib Dems and Greens would prefer Starmer to Farage. However, they aren't where Labour will need them to be. They are not living in the kinds of constituencies in any significant number that helps Labour out. So it is all changing quite rapidly. Midterm polls notoriously need to be taken with a pinch of salt. But the things to be looking at is the MRPs, the constituency level polls closer to the election time, to see whether that kind of strategy can actually work, or whether the voters just simply aren't where you need them to be to have the effect that you want. Quiet riot. While we're talking about right-wing parties, Alex, we do need to briefly mention the defection in the other direction to Reform and away from the Tories in the form of Jake Berry. How big a blow do you think that is for Badenoch, or is it somebody that we've kind of all forgotten about and not really a big fish anymore?
I mean, it's someone that we'd all like to forget about. But it's an interesting thing, okay, because Jake Berry, if there is one thing that defines him, is that he's a Johnsonite. He's a massive, massive Johnson fan and backer. In that sense, I think his defection is quite significant in one of two ways. Either Johnson is about to jump onto the Reform bandwagon, which would make for a very, very interesting few months, as those two giant egos battle it out like Ghidorah and Godzilla. Or it does mean that the Johnsonite appraisal is that the Conservative Party is dead. And Badenoch's reaction to it actually helps boost that latter idea. Because what she said was that, well, there are always people who will go where the polls show they're more likely to win. And it's like, what are you doing? You are confirming that basically people have a better chance of winning if they go over to Reform than if they stay with you.
She is so
That's
bad
what
at
you're
politics.
doing. She's so bad at this. You're basically saying to people, I want you to be ideologically pure. But if your main goal is being elected, Reform is over there. What are you doing? Are you telling possibly the most self-serving group of politicians in the entire country that if you fancy a well-paid job and influence, Reform is the place to be? Right, Naomi, that's more than enough for one weekend. I think you will agree. I've got a barbecue to go fire up. Listeners, thank you so much for lending us your ears this sunny Sunday. And don't forget about a live Ask Us Anything session next weekend. Head over to ko-fi.com/QuietRidePod to sign up for an invite.
We'll be back on Thursday with another terrific guest making their in-studio Quiet Riot debut. And there is a special bonus show coming soon with Peter Gagan and Alex that I, for one, cannot wait to tune in for.
And also, later today, a new episode of Podyssey drops. I have finally done battle with Aesop, and it's resulted in a mega Podyssey, a 3-episode special, the first of which will drop this Sunday afternoon. So look out for that.
I cannot wait for that. Oh, I've got so much to tee up in my inbox.
I know. Very, very looking forward to people's comments on it. So for now, slap on the SPF, find a shady spot and enjoy the rest of your weekend. We love you so, so much.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Quiet Riot is an audio production by Cooler Heads with Naomi Smith and Alex Andreou. Produced by Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangeeta. Artwork by Simona Canelu. And edited by me, Alex Reese. Quiet Riot is a co-production with Sandstone Global.
Quiet Riot.
Sorry, my love, just a second.
Okay.
I just need to close the script over here and open the script over here. Like a Bond villain I am with all the screens surrounding me.